I'm a libertarian. What I'm getting is,
did you vote for Joe Jorgensen or Trump?
Who?
Joe Jorgensen. That was the perfect answer. Thank you.
That's always a perfect answer. And welcome to the Liberty Podcast Review. This is Tyler Yonke, and today we're going to talk about Liberty Lockdown Podcast. We have on with us Clint. Clint, how you doing?
I'm good, Tyler. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciated that review you gave me a couple months ago. I think you were the first person to do a review of my show, so I felt like it would be a great idea to come on and fill in some of the gaps.
Right. So first of all, you've been very generous with your time to everybody on Twitter. And I think I'm just going to emphasize for people to go check you out on Twitter. You will interact. You will do whatever you can do. And so I really appreciate that. Look, for me, I just want to give you an idea. I wanted to, you know who Andrew, no, I'm sorry. He's the guy that does the lockout days videos, and Malice has been pushing him. I'm trying to remember his name, but 20-year-old kid. And he made some comment in one of his videos. He did the blue-pilled libertarian. He made some comment in his videos about, doing what you can for liberty. And on your song, you have your own thing about, stop tweeting from your phone. And so I have another podcast, and it's all about cycling. I've been doing it for years on end. And I don't really have someone to talk to about liberty stuff besides my wife, and she's a little bored of that. So this was my means of giving this out there and being able to talk. And so I wanted to do a little different angle and kind of talk about, reviewing shows. And then I was a little harsh on Keith Knight as far as some of his production. But I think the kid's brilliant, by the way. Yeah. And my wife kind of came after me. So the premise here is to talk to some people that are doing podcasts. So why don't we start with you and give your, and by the way, we're going to break down some of these other things here, but give me some understanding of how you got into the podcasting itself. I think you had a podcast before this about the liberty stuff. You've been blowing it up, and why, and I know you're a libertarian or ANCAP, but maybe give a brief understanding to people about not so much your inception into this, but where you're at politically and why you decided to do a podcast.
Sure. So I'm an entrepreneur, really. Like, this is not at all where I expected to be in my life, to be honest. But I was a mortgage broker for the past 15 years or so, and a real estate investor. That's really my forte. I have a bachelor's in business degree, and I'm, it's kind of what I've been bred to do. My dad was also in a similar field. So this is nothing I ever expected to be doing. But I had been doing a really just fun, stupid show with two of my best guy friends for a couple of years. All of us were very profane. None of us ever talked about, we never publicized it because we didn't want our families knowing, because we were saying all sorts of crazy stuff. So
did you live in the same community with them, or was this maybe your way of just interacting across the lines here?
Yeah, no, we were all, born and raised in San Diego, okay. But we're all in our 30s. So we're starting to have distance between each other, like you do as people have families and whatnot. So it was a way to just keep in touch with some of your best guy friends, essentially. And it was just shooting the shit. It was nothing real serious, but I always had, as a lifelong libertarian, I always tried to bring my politics into it. And over the past 20 years of friendship, I have converted basically all of my close friends into at least some form of quasi-libertarianism. I would classify myself more as a anarcho-capitalist at this point, but that's kind of the how I got into podcasting. And after doing that for a couple of years, having no audience whatsoever because we were just doing it for our close friends, and it was just fun. I did get fairly, skilled at it because we were doing it for so many years. And when the lockdowns happened, I was so upset with what I was seeing in terms of the LP's response to it or lack thereof. And then also the fact that the general populace was just going along for the ride. So at that point, my business was kind of screwed up by it as well. And I decided to start Liberty Lockdown, which was my outlet for simply venting about the lockdowns, and then it turned into something that could now be a career. I don't know.
Well, I hope so for you. And so just our interaction to begin with on Twitter, you had posted out, and people want to check out the review I did of your show. I think it was episode 2. That's how quick I took you on here. Yeah. And it was you saying, "Hey, this is gonna change millions of lives," and it's kind of a comment to your friend that you had. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. It's BS artist here. So I went to listen to it, and I was like, I was really impressed, first of all. So I could tell you either had the gift for gab, or you had done this a little bit before, but you definitely, and your friend was engaging. And I'll just say real quickly about some of your stuff, because you've been on everybody's show lately, and I guess you're coming up on Dave Smith. So that's the word here.
I think Dave's going to be on my show actually.
Oh, okay.
But, he hasn't confirmed yet, so we'll see.
Well, we'll just assume so. Yeah. Your ability to interact and one thing I was talking to my wife about this morning, which is sometimes I really like a podcast. You could go out there and you can interview people, but when that interviewee pushes back and asks questions as well, it just gives a little bit different dynamic. And by the way, you do that really well. You did that to Pete a few times. Matter of fact, you kept asking him some questions, and then he was avoiding, or he was kind of humming around, and then he came through with some answers. So why don't you tell us about, so this took off, and how are you getting all these guests on your show? Just blows my mind.
Yeah. Well, I think that it's kind of a chicken and the egg scenario. Like, you want to get the big guests to get the show to be big, but you have to be big to get the big guests. And
right.
Which comes first. I think the cool thing about the Liberty community is that even though these people are famous in our world, they're not really famous. They're not making millions of dollars from this stuff. Some of them maybe, Dave might be, I don't know. But for the most part, they're really true believers. They're passionate. And if they see you, even if you just have a solid, Twitter audience that is kind of rabid, even if you're small, you can sometimes get, guests that are kind of outside of your scope. And that's kind of what I did. I just started to reach out to people. Honestly, I haven't been very aggressive about it. I most of the time it's a listener of mine that tags someone else, saying, hey, you should go on Liberty Lockdown. And that kind of organic, recruiting really does a lot. So, but obviously early on, that's not how it was. Early on, you kind of just have to grind, and you're going to be speaking into the void, and you just have to accept the fact that the audience is not going to be there for a while. And if you're a true believer like I am, and it seems as if you are, it's not a problem, because this is therapy for me. So, I just kept, nose to the grindstone type mentality. And slowly but surely you start to get bigger and bigger guests. And then, once I went on Free Men Beyond the Wall, the show just like popped. So that's kind of the lesson from all this, is that, just stay on the grind, and eventually you'll have a breakthrough, especially if you have a compelling message that people are gravitating towards.
Right. Well, early on you had, I think, your dad and your friend there. So, you take the guests that you can get. So I really appreciate you coming in here. Speaking of Pete, there's a few years ago, do you know who Jason Stapleton is? Kind of was big. Okay. So evidently he and Pete had this was when Pete was, a little bit lower down on the spectrum there. And Pete was, Jason was always saying, punch above your weight, pick on that big guy and punch above. So that's what Pete, Pete doesn't really give a shit about anybody. Yeah, so he's just punching
anybody.
Right. He's punching down, he's punching up. And evidently there was a beef there. So that's kind of actually, it's funny. That's how I kind of found out about Pete, was from this little thing. And that Jason was ripping on him for doing this, this little dog yapping at his feet. And then I just kind of migrated to Pete. So it worked. Yeah. So good for him.
Yeah, no, that's true. And I mean, that's kind of the toxic environment of Twitter, but it is also a marketing tactic. If you can get into a war with a bigger guy, that can help. I don't do that, because there's plenty of people that I disagree with vehemently that I can get into arguments with. And if that gets people's attention, then so be it. I mean, that's exactly what happened with Dave Smith, is that I did that Neocon debate last Tuesday, and it kind of went, viral amongst the community, having people really talk about it. And Dave had just recently started following me on Twitter out of the blue, because I was arguing with the Loser Brigade. And and then he messaged me saying, hey, I'd like to check out, the full debate. And that's kind of how it all started. So you just never know. I mean, I guess that's really the truth of it, is like, as long as you're really committed to this stuff and you just keep grinding, eventually people will find you.
So you made an interesting comment, and I think it ties into some of the things, Dave, and about the Liberty, the LP party in general, which is small fish or big fish in a small pond, I guess, kind of what you're saying. Hey, these are big people in our world, but they're not really in the full scope of things. As you can see, even with the election, they're not really big deals. So that can also be a problem that we see with all these people trying to hold their positions in, the LP and such, where they're feeling intimidated in a sense by the Dave and the takeover and all that. Do you see a correlation there as well?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think that's a great point, is that I think the other reason that the Mises Caucus and people like me are kind of edging into their territory is because I don't care. I simply don't care about having power in the LP.
Right.
Like my life is not this. It may end up being this, but I'm a very well-established entrepreneur besides all of this. And to some of these people, I think that it's their life, and I think that that's when it comes to being in a third party in particular. If you're in the big two, I can understand making it your life because there's an actual career that can be had from it.
Right.
I cannot fathom making your life as being an LP member. Like that is weird to me. I don't think that it's actually beneficial to the movement. And I think that the people that are out achieving in the real world have a place in taking this over if they choose to, because they're going to come in with the idea of, win or fail, we're going to just go. We're going to go hard. And that's what I'd like to see more of personally.
So personally, I need to change my goals from being in the LP hierarchy, change my weekly.
And honestly, there's nothing wrong with it. I'm not
right.
trying to diminish it. Yeah, I'm just saying.
It seems like you and I, in a sense, I mean, what you're doing is you feel like, in a sense, you got pushed into having to be a figurehead or a voice, right? Because, the lockdown comes. I'm in Northern California. You're in Southern California. This shit has been unreal. It's been a year now. Side note, I have 4 kids. 2 of them go to private school. They've been back going to school. The other ones have been online that are going to public school. It's, it's out of control. And the teachers union is in this state is by far in a way, probably the most powerful union or the voting bloc or powerful, influence with the government. So
unbelievable, honestly. Just out of curiosity, has there been any outbreaks at the private schools?
Oh, no. I mean, it's, they've had an issue with, because my daughter goes to school, she's in high school, and they share this campus with like first and kindergarten all the way up through 8th. So there was one where it crossed, one of the other campuses kind of had it. So they shut down for a week. You do it from home, then boom, go right back. My son's been in college and he's been going this whole time. So,
what state's that in?
Washington.
Okay.
So, the eastern part of Washington. What do you call it when you're an essential worker? I think teachers are now kind of showing, the teachers union, that they're non-essential worker or non-essential workers, I guess.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because, they have really done our job for us, as far as I'm concerned,
right.
in terms of turning people against public schools as well as unions. So I think it's been a catastrophic mistake on their part, and they're overplaying their hands in a way that even leftists are starting to be like, I need to go back to
right.
work, and I can't have my kid at home, and these teachers are standing in the way of my livelihood, essentially. And it's just a disaster all the way around. But I think it sheds some light. I think that's the one positive of the lockdowns, is that it has shed a lot of light on the ineptitude of the government and the power of public unions in our government as well. So hopefully people don't forget these messages and they actually make some real changes here moving forward.
I agree. There's something here. We're going to go through Castley's debate with you. I'm going to play some clips, and because I want to go over some things, and I kind of dug into them, and I'm not remembering exactly what the clip is about, but I had a comment, which was the willingness of the people to be ruled. Okay, it is unbelievable to me. I thought when this first was coming on, I'm like, hey, here's our libertarian moment. All right, we're ready for this. We're going to take to the streets. It's going to be, and then the riots and all those things that happen. And when the government was switching back and forth there about like things that aren't okay to do, and that's when you jump the shark. I'm just not into it. So I have the cycling podcast, and I made a comment because some people were calling out other cyclists in the area for doing group rides. Okay. And it was, shaming them online, going on Facebook. So I went on the podcast and I was talking about this, and I said, I said, being a snitch. I said, that's not really cool. I said, Anne Frank wrote a whole book about it. Well, I got major pushback, and this one guy that's pretty high up in the state of California for in politics, he called me out on Twitter and sent his legion of people after me. So I had him on, we discussed it, and he wasn't upset to being compared to a Nazi. He was upset that the people that were out riding were being compared to the victims of the Holocaust. And I'm like, it was odd, but yet you've seen that over and over. So any problems you've had getting involved in like the liberty side here and pushing back so hard and getting any, pushback from that?
No, because I'm not even in the LP at this point. I'm kind of the outsider I don't know, arbiter or something that is trying to course correct and assist the party in messaging, because it's been so bad. But as far as my tact online is, I tell my truth in a very aggressive manner, and I try to open eyes, and I let the chips fall where they may. And if it offends people, if it loses followers, I don't care. I think that what we are lacking is sincere honesty and a willingness to tell your truth, no matter how upsetting it is. And that's been my goal, is to do that. And I think that what that creates is an audience of people who are either similarly minded or too afraid to be like that. And then they can feel inspired to hopefully do the same. And that's really my goal, is I want people to stand up for themselves. I want people to start to tell their truth, because I'm of the belief that this is still a majority free country in terms of, what people actually want. You could argue that perhaps it's not, since Biden won, and this is the direction that our government is going with lockdowns and whatnot. But I'm still of the belief that it's a silent majority that is being cowed by, cancel culture or SJW nonsense. And I'm trying to get people to realize that you're not alone. If you stand up, you will find allies. And by doing so, I have discovered that there are a lot of allies out there that very much want this message to grow. So hopefully it will.
Yeah, and totally. And I also believe there's people out there that, and I don't blame them, that they just don't have the ability to stand up. Sometimes they don't necessarily know what to say, but sometimes they're in that job where I'm a family law attorney. Okay. I do that. And there's a lot of my clients that have just gone through hell this last year of losing jobs. Right. So it's just really affecting. Maybe the other party can't now pay support. Maybe they've lost their job, so that, everything's just getting twisted up, and there's a lot of stress out there. Maybe you're afraid to be losing your job, by speaking up about these issues. Who knows what it is. So I think it's incumbent for people like yourself to take that on.
Exactly. Yeah. And I recognize and I realize, the blessed position that I'm in, to be financially free and independent at, 38 years old, is like, not a lot of people are in that spot. So, I don't begrudge anyone that's biting their tongue to maintain their employment, especially if they have kids. If you're single and you're young, I would like to see you show a little bit more courage, because it's only you that's at risk here. But if you have a family, I totally understand, and I sympathize with that position. So I'm really not casting aspersions or passing judgment on these people. I just think it's important to realize that your silence only worsens the situation. It's because the horde, the mob, is in control of the conversation and the narrative in this country. If we don't stand up with courage, how do we expect to win this fight? I just don't see any chance of it. And ultimately, it's going to come down to lawsuits and things of that nature for people that get fired for having dissident belief systems. And I hope that there's more and more people that do this, and it stems the tide. It turns it around, and we get back to a semblance of sanity, where we're not all on eggshells trying to avoid offending the school teacher or whatever.
Right. Let me ask you, I'm going to do some rapid fire questions here, and then we'll get to some other stuff. What do you think is more, maybe I'll do it in Keith Knight style. What do you think is more utopian? Socialism, the middle of the road democracy, or Ancapistan?
Are we speaking generally or in this very moment?
No, I'm saying so. And the reason I thought about this, because you had on a great guest, by the way. My 14-year-old that actually was enjoying it, listen to it. Some doctor was talking about anarchy, some philosophy. Anyway, really good. But you kept referring to anarchy as utopian, as a utopia. And so I'm just curious, do you think that's utopia? Because I'm just giving a hint here. I actually think anything but a voluntary society is actually utopian, trying to go the other way. You're trying to bend people to do something that is just not there, and you're trying to create a utopia, whereas in the voluntary society, the anarchy is actually the lack of a utopia itself. So I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah. And that's why I asked if we're talking about in our current environment. And that's the reason I use it as utopic, because we're so far down the dystopic path. Getting to Ancapistan feels utopic. And
I understand.
That's the reason I said it so many times in that regard. As far as, what is more utopic, as in fictitious and nonsensical, I think that socialism is, because ultimately it requires a very powerful state, and even if you get the anarcho-socialists who believe that, oh, we don't need a state, but we also can't have private property, and I'm like, who's going to be the arbiter of that? Who's going to regulate that? Well, it's going to be the state eventually, and then you're going to end up with greed and corruption and everything that you always get with every socialist system. So, in my opinion, that's the most utopic and nonsensical. Obviously, a middle of the road democracy is kind of what we have now, even though we're definitely leaning towards a socialist or fascist governance at this point. So yeah, as far as what I think would be the most beneficial, clearly as an ANCAP, I believe that anarcho-capitalism is the way. I just think that it's utopic from this starting point. It's going to be very hard to get there.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to require a collapse in the interim for us to have a chance of building towards that. But in the meantime, we have to educate the populace so that they don't call for a dictator or a tyrant to protect them during the collapse. We're going to have to find some sort of re-embrace of the spirit of independence and freedom-loving, people. And at this point, we don't have it. So we've got a lot of work to do.
Do you? I'm under the impression. I don't know if I've just kind of melded this into my own thoughts, or it's something that I've heard on other podcasts and such. But it seems like the woke side is almost the inevitable semblance of this whole anti-bullying campaign that we've had. So it's been on, going on and on and on. Kids can't make disputes they can't resolve disputes themselves. They always go to some sort of authority. Mm-hmm. And now this call for authority, and you can't ever, hurt someone, is really, it's a bullying itself. But this,
yes.
Any thoughts there?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. And I think what it does is it shows human nature. It shows that even when you outlaw bullying, you will still have an outlet for it, but it's going to be the inverse. It's kind of like you outlaw racism and now everyone hates white people, and it's the only person that you're allowed to basically belittle and degrade or deride. And that's similar with bullying. And I think that's all part of the downfall of this culture, is that, as soon as you made it so that no one bullied, and you had to always have an authority figure, it infantilizes. It creates a population of people that are very fragile. And then it creates a victim mentality that requires bigger and bigger government to look after them, because this is now how they feel they have to survive, is the only way. They're not strong enough to do it on their own. And I think they're right. I don't think that these people are strong enough to do it on their own at this point. And that's why I'm such an opponent to public schooling, is because I think that this has bred it into our culture. Yeah,
good point. Did you see the Carol Ann and Dave Smith and with Michael Heiss? Are you part of the Mises Caucus? I am. I don't know if
I'm not yet, but I will be. I'm moving states, so I'm just waiting to sign up.
Good point. So I joined that like right away. I might be I'm not a founding member, but I was pretty early on in there. So they had a commentary, a little thing on a video that they did, and then Dave had her on his show, and I just thought it was interesting, and I liked her point of view there. But she had real trouble with the takeover and kind of the aggressive point of view. And it reminds me of Rush Limbaugh just passed, and my wife never liked him. She just, I know a lot of women that didn't like him, partly for the fact that I think he was so confident in his own beliefs that sometimes it just put people off. Maybe it was women. But sure. Carol Ann didn't like this takeover. And let me ask you this. So she's got pink hair, no big deal. I don't care what she looks like. But she said she was very forthright both times she was on with Dave about she doesn't care what appearance. She dresses this way, she looks this way. Screw you, I'm not going to take this. But in the same respect, she has trouble with the appearance of the word takeover. So any problems we see there? Because you're right. Welcome everybody. I come from more of the conservative side of that came through on there, and my family. When you talk about voting libertarian, they're the pot smoking, fat guy. The naked guy up on the stage. Right. So image is something about this party. And if you're going to be joining, what do you think about her conflict there, if there is one?
Yeah, I thought that her conversation with Dave, I listened to it last night, actually, while I was at the gym. So I do definitely have some comments on that. I think that Dave's counterpoint to her was pretty much what I would have said, is that we need more aggression, and we need not aggression in the sense of like violence, but we need a more aggressive voice in this movement. And the young men, which don't appeal to her because we are filled with piss and vinegar, I think she described it as, does put off some women. And I actually had on Maggie Anders, and she had the same complaint about the Mises Caucus, is that we oftentimes rub people the wrong way because we don't worry about appearances so much, and we just go hard to the point. That's more my style, so there's nothing that's going to stop me from being who I am. But I do understand that it's not really appealing to some women in particular. It seems as if that it really pushes them away, or rubs them the wrong way, at least. And I have sympathy for that. I want women involved in this movement. So I think that Dave's counter argument about it being like, look at us as your support troops. Like, don't look at us as your enemy. Don't look at us as representing you poorly, but rather, if you consider this situation as dire as most of us view it to be, perhaps you want some, aggressive shit talking troops at your back to try and push this message in a way that perhaps you haven't succeeded in doing. And I think that's the other point I would make, is that by trying to maintain appearances and trying to get along to appear as if we are moderates that you can deal with, it hasn't gotten us anywhere. We've existed for 50 years. We've played the games. We've tried to play the conservative lane to get in. We've tried to play the lefty lane to get in. It doesn't work. These people are very set in their ways. And I think that my view and my vantage point is that I'm going to push the harsh, radical freedom message as hard as I can. And if it rubs you the wrong way, I apologize, but I'm not going to stop. So, get used to it, I guess.
No, and politics is not for necessarily the faint of heart either. You see some of these women, I'm not bashing women, but just hang with me here. In the debates, and Hillary, she backs away. Oh my God, you're intimidating me by walking towards me. And I'm like, how are you going to deal with the Saudi Arabian government that you're nothing to them? So step up. Don't just stand behind your skirt, and let's deal with this in this other way. So the Mises Caucus, are they just a nice place for white Nazi men, or is it a place that's going to the liberty movement's future?
Well, if it was a place for Nazi men, I would not be involved. So, no, it's not. Yeah, no, I know the thesis about it and the counter arguments. No, if I sensed any level of racism amongst the Mises Caucus, I wouldn't want to be a participant. I am not a racist. I am not a white supremacist or anything like that. If anything, I'm extraordinarily offended at the allegations that have been levied against these people, because I've been interacting with them for a few years now, and I've never sensed any racism whatsoever. And I mean, certainly we do make aggressive jokes that are no longer allowed. And I think that is kind of, from my upbringing, I'm a 90s baby. And that was kind of the apex of treating everyone as if your skin didn't matter. And that's
right.
and
irreverence.
And I think that was in some ways kind of the apex of race relations, in that you were allowed to make racial jokes to your Mexican or black friend, and they would make jokes back to you. And that was a level of camaraderie and a level of, not otherizing, but, bringing together the races in a way that I think we really lack at this point. And I think that it's a huge mistake to treat minorities with kid gloves, and I won't do it. I just simply won't, because I think of them as my equal. And right. and for that to be viewed as racist, to me, is nonsense. And, if people want to make those allegations, so be it. I would encourage you to listen to my show. And if I come across as sounding as if I'm actually racist after you really listen to me, I'd be surprised. So same with the Mises Caucus. I think it's the same one. Right.
No, I'm totally with you. And I saw this Bee Gees documentary thing, and I think it was Andy Gibb, who's the younger one that died. He had a shirt on that said "Women should be offensive and not heard," which I thought it was funny, but I don't know if you get away with that kind of stuff anymore. Just the whole anything of being edgy. And I don't know. Do you have kids?
I don't yet. No.
Okay. Well, when you do, you should you'll enjoy them. I have 4. They're 14 to 20. I love them. Wow. And they're all somewhat, they're very much skeptical. They're not cynical kids. And I pushed them to that. And so we have a lot of fun because they're pretty good. They would enjoy that shirt, by the way. But many people would not.
Yeah. Well, I see, that's the type of humor I like, though. I think that edgy humor is what is, I think that's where humor lives, is on the edge. So right. This entire mentality of cancel culture and SJW nonsense is really, it hasn't killed comedy, thank God, because you can still get all these outlets through podcasts and whatnot. But it certainly has made the mainstream comedy almost unwatchable. And I think that it's just bad for society. I think that you need to have truth tellers, and people that are trying to be funny need to be on the edge of that truth and pushing the line. I mean, Eddie Murphy, the stuff he said in the 80s was psychotically homophobic and racist and all sorts of stuff.
His outfit.
Yeah, that alone would get you canceled nowadays. So I hope that we have a shift back towards that. And honestly, if the overall society doesn't do it, I don't care, because there's going to be a market demand for it. And I think that, people will fill that void.
So you're probably old enough. Do you remember Must Watch TV, NBC? I mean, all the comedy shows that used to be on. I'm not going to say Cosby, but, we'll say Cosby. And I was thinking about this not too long ago. I don't know that I watch really any comedy anymore. It just, is there any, because we are just flooded with all these. I watch, check out Legion of Skanks, and I'll tell you what, I do belly laugh. My wife's always like, what's going on? I belly laugh, multiple times listening to those things, because it's irreverent. And yet I would say back, in the 90s, that's just your standard type of stuff. Maybe not quite standard, but
I mean, it's definitely pushing the line a little bit, even versus 90s, but it's really not that outrageous. And that's just shows how much the shift in the culture has occurred, that people can't even handle that. To answer your question, as far as comedies that I watch, there was, God, what was it called? Do you know the rapper Little Dicky?
No.
Okay.
Look how wide I am.
Well, you have kids that are,
that's true. They might know.
They
I don't
probably
check
know.
their phones out though.
He had a show on FXX that was really great. And then there was also, I like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
They definitely pushed the line. I still like South Park. All the stuff that is right on the edge and basically being hunted down by cancel culture as we speak. Those are the only comedies that I like, and I don't like laugh track stuff, so I can't mess with any of the mainstream stuff, basically.
So maybe it's the proliferation of all these different networks, and that it's not just concentrated onto the 3 or 4 major networks that I'm in a phase where I think that this is happening, but it's still
no, you're right. Yeah, no, mainstream stuff is just trash as far as I'm concerned. So.
Right. Who is the best interview you've had on your show yet?
I mean, I really do love having Maggie on.
Can you hear that?
I can.
I'll just edit the video part here, but dude, that's
man, on the playback there, I sound like Notorious B.I.G. That's great.
Yeah, that's stellar. So, okay, got you back on. Everything good. Look, these are the kind of things that you have to hash out with a little podcast like mine before you get to Dave's. Do you need to go out and get a new computer?
I have a really nice computer, but I think my storage is nearing capacity because the damn files for all this stuff are so big. So
gotcha. So let me talk to you. First of all, finish what you were saying there about your best guest. You said it was Maggie.
Well, honestly, I'm going to be like a proud parent and not say that I have a favorite. I think that Maggie brings a softness to the show that I really appreciate. She brings the the female element that kind of helps course correct some of the shenanigans that we get to online. Obviously, Kurt the Libertarian is a great resource, and I think that he's brilliant. So I love having him on. I'm trying to think. I mean, obviously, when I've had Robbie the Fire and Pete Quinones on, that was a real treat. So I think that maybe the best dynamic I might have had was with Robbie. He was definitely like that was really good,
by the way.
Thank you. He was great.
And you know why? I mean, once again, he did the thing where, and I see this with him as well. By the way, he talked more in that one episode than he has like maybe a year's worth with Dave. I don't know if they have a contractual restriction for him, but he pushed back and he asked you questions. And once again, I think that when it's someone like yourself, I enjoyed that. So
yeah, I think it's a good balance. I think when you have a guest, or if you are a guest, and you can actually bring different angles to the show, it's really beneficial. And if you're doing a lot of recording, it's nice to have someone that comes up with different angles, because oftentimes we can get our own lane, and it's nice to have someone that can be like, hey, what about this, right. And so I appreciate that, and I think it's a sign of a strong speaker and a strong position if you can actually defend it from all angles. So I never begrudge anyone that brings counter arguments.
Have you encountered, and you don't have to say the person, but have you encountered any of those interviews that you're just kind of like pulling teeth to get answers out of them? I mean, I haven't heard any that you probably have had like that, but maybe you'll encounter.
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely highs and lows when it comes to guests, that's for sure. For the most part, I try to only have on people that I've already conversed with, or I've seen them on other shows, so that I know that they're capable of doing what we do.
Right.
But sometimes you're going to have rough patches. Honestly, Pete was in a very, very low point when he was on my show.
Yeah.
So that was surprising. I didn't expect it. So that you have to adjust on the fly sometimes.
Yeah, I only know that he says he lives near Atlanta. I would have put out some sort of suicide watch.
I know, dude.
He seemed a little on the edge.
He was very depressed that day.
Right. So besides this interview that we're doing right now, nothing too cringeworthy then.
No, honestly, I haven't. I mean, I would say that the most cringe stuff I get is the constant bombardment with people that want to come on now.
Gotcha. Yeah.
That are, they're like nameless, faceless accounts that
right.
are super small, and I don't know anything about you. And they're like, oh, I think I could come talk about this with you. And it's like, okay, well, maybe you can, and maybe you'd be amazing, but I have nothing to judge by, so I'm not going to do it. I'm sorry.
And that is rough.
That's the hardest. Yeah.
No, that's rough for you because you don't know if there's going to be some sort of like as an example, I just did a review of Thaddeus Russell's, and I'm like, I imagine, when these people are like yourself, you're having this podcast and you're talking so much, we tend to feel like we know you, right? If I were to see you out in public, I might initially act like I know you because I hear you so much, and you wouldn't know me. Well, now you'd know me, but you wouldn't know me from Adam, or Thaddeus wouldn't. So these people, they probably have this, but you don't know if that is that autistic person on the spectrum that just might not even talk and be interesting. So
true.
Good luck for you.
That's a big problem. The other weirdest thing about having a podcast that you have friends and family listen to is that I will have not stayed in contact with some people for a while. And then when I see them again, they'll come up to me and be like, they'll just start hammering all sorts of topics that I've been talking about. And they'll know stuff about my life that I haven't talked to them about. So that's always off-putting. So that's kind of, it's fun though. I mean, it's nothing negative really.
So let's talk about real quick about this storage problem you're having here. So are you using any special gear to record these, or are you just recording them straight to your computer? What's kind of your process?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not super tech savvy. I'm young enough to not be a total idiot when it comes to computers, but I'm also not great at it. I'm a finance guy. So, I have an external hard drive that I try and offload the episodes to once everything's recorded. But as far as recording goes, it's just straight to the PC, and then upload to SoundCloud, and then upload to YouTube, and then come up with some creative plug on Twitter to try and get a few new listeners to check me out, and that's all I do.
Oh yeah, you've been blowing it up. You been getting any requests for sponsorship or anything like that, or is it just pretty much?
Surprisingly, no. I haven't. I mean, I get a lot of other podcasters that want to do ads and mutual ads and things like that. But at least I'm back quickly this time.
You're killing me. How's this possible?
The editing's going to be a bastard. I'm sorry.
No,
I think that it might be my lighting, so I'm just going to leave the lighting off and hope that you don't mind the dimness.
No, you're good to go, and we'll keep going here. And it's perfectly fine. I'm just enjoying. You still have a little bit of time then?
Yeah, totally.
Okay. Let's talk about your debate with Kevin Castley. This amazed me, and I wanted to talk to you about it. We'll play some clips, a few things specifically. Kind of one, I was baffled by him in a few ways, but as someone who, as someone. Well, by the way, you did great, and I listened to him multiple times. As someone who came to this liberty side from being a right winger, but I was always I read the law. Bastiat, I've read Ayn Rand a bunch, and so I kind of had some a little bit different feelings on this. And some of the things he's so concrete about, I always had questions, right? And they were always just a little bit, I don't want to be a hypocrite. So he is very confident about a lot of things. Do you think any of it? Well, first of all, why don't you tell about how this even came about? Yeah.
So my buddy Ace Arcus on Twitter was going to war with neocons because he had this post that went viral about John McCain. And something like looking up, or some snide comment that went really, really viral. It had like 5,000 likes or something crazy. And neocons came across it somehow. And then Ace, being the autistic specimen that he is, decided to have a war with them for like 2 weeks straight. And, dozens of these neocons just going back and forth. And then this Kevin Castley guy came out of nowhere, challenging him to a debate, challenging any of the ANCAPs to a debate. And then people started tagging me saying, Ace doesn't want it. We should get Liberty Lockdown on this. And I obliged. I mean, I'm not a debater. I've never been in a debate before. So this was outside my comfort zone. And that's part of the reason. And he had also just debated Keith, who I thought did a really good job making kind of the factual arguments against neoconservatism and for non-interventionist stance. So I told him, I don't want a moderator. I don't want to have you giving 10-minute monologues. I think it's worthless. I think that we need to have a conversation. And he after many, kicking and screaming fights, he finally obliged, because I think he knew that, my audience was far bigger than his. So he was like, okay, I'll give you what you want. And then I kind of took a Socratic approach of like allowing him to lay out his own case and demonstrate his own, in my opinion, psychotic belief system.
Right. So bear with me here. I'm going to play a clip. First of all, this came about a little bit further in the opening. You had asked him a question. And
information. I'm a 27-year-old recent graduate at university, did a degree in economics, political science. I am basically I describe myself as a liberal neoconservative with offensive realist characteristics. So what that means essentially is that I believe in the preservation of the Enlightenment and the expansion of the Enlightenment, the West, as we see it, the Western project throughout the world. I'm a moral universalist. I run a meme page called Liberal Hawk Memes for moral universalist teens. We got about 2,500 followers over there. And that's basically, the idea that, well, democracy doesn't just matter here. It's an inherent virtue that is morally superior throughout the world. In other words, if I'm born in the United States or if I'm born in the UK, I can recognize that the West is the best. But if I'm born in Russia or born in North Korea, I can also recognize that the West is the best and try my best to try to get out, the hell out of there, if possible. And we do have defectors and stuff that, you ask those defectors, where would you rather live, North Korea or America? They'd say, well, like they miss the food, or they like having people that they can communicate with from North Korea. But if you ask them where would they rather be if you could speak the same language and all that, they'd rather have the rights that Americans have, basically. And so for me, kind of a bit about my background, I started YouTube shortly after graduating, and I've been making videos basically for the most part focused on interventionism, on national security issues, on international relations at large on a theoretical standpoint, and really trying to rather snap people out of this this idea that, well, you can support democracy, you can support human rights, you can support virtues in the West, but think that, well, but who are we to say that that's better than what they have in North Korea or Iran or whatever? Whereas for me, part of my project here is to try to say, yeah, we are the best and we should be proud of that. So that's a little bit about me. Is there anything else that you...
Okay, so I hope that didn't trigger you too much. Oh, Clint, we lost you again.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sorry. It's like, what are you going to do,
Just so it's good that this is happening once again, like I said, with me rather than someone else.
I know. This legitimately could have been Dave Smith, and I would have probably blown my shot to every.
Yeah, you would have shit your pants in it. This be like it's like 3 people.
I'm gonna have to get a PC guy in here to see what's going on. Anyways, so I assume you played out the rest of the clip.
Now I'm concerned because I was like, man, Clint's really staring this one down. Then I went back. Was done with the clip, and you were still staring, so it wasn't really there. If you want to continue, I'm fine. I've got plenty of time today. We can continue doing this, but if this is too much and you need to do whatever, I'm fully open. All I would say is you're gonna have to come back and we're gonna finish out this Kevin Cassidy stuff.
Let's give it one more go. If I crash again, then we'll just call it a day, because it's obvious that the PC is shot. So I don't know.
Okay, so do you want me to play his? Because let me go through.
I heard like 80% of it, I think. So
okay, I want to play you the last minute maybe of what he said here. The last 30 seconds here. Now it's not wanting to do it on my side. Let's try this here.
Like information. I'm a 27
or political arc.
Hang on.
Everyone has their own evolution.
Large on a theoretical standpoint, and really trying to rather snap people out of this this idea that, well, you can support democracy, you can support human rights, you can support virtues in the West, but think that, well, but who are we to say that that's better than what they have in North Korea or Iran or whatever? Whereas for me, part of my project here is to try to say, yeah, we are the best and we should be proud of that. So that's a little bit about me. Is there any?
Okay, so that gives you an idea. So in some respects, I mean, and so I'm going to kind of push back on him. Okay, maybe I should restart. Do you think him being 27 years old makes a difference for some of his thoughts here?
Certainly. I mean, my own belief system has evolved, over the past 20 years. So I don't see any reason. I mean, I'm only 10 years older than him, but I don't see any reason that he won't continue to evolve. Hopefully he will. Certainly after 9/11, I had a gut instinct or a reaction that was like, I want to damage the people that damaged us. So right. I don't blame any of that. And I certainly have some sympathy for his perspective given his age, but ultimately he is endorsing a system of, mass violence across the globe that I find really morally repulsive. So that was why I was willing to debate him, even though he's young. And the fact that he has any audience whatsoever, I wanted to try and reach some of those young guys that are probably listening to him to see if I can dissuade them.
And I thought you did a great job of that. And because that's very difficult, but I mean, near the last 20, 30 minutes, the passion and I think maybe exasperation and your part started to come out, and it was perfectly fine. It seems like to me, his motto is kind of like, I want freedom for everybody, and damn it, I'm going to make you enjoy it the way I want it. I mean, exactly. We've learned one thing, like listening to it, because I don't disagree kind of with, I think the West is the best. I mean, there's nothing really wrong with that. But his premise then is, and this is where it comes back to what I was talking about with the COVID. What we've learned is, the idea was we're going to spread democracy to the Middle East. That does not work. We can't even spread it to our own country right now. So how are we going to spread it? Did I lose you? I lost you. I lost him again. Damn it. Clint. Damn Clint for coming in for part 1. We're going to do part 2. I hope so. Hope we're going to do a part 2 where we're going to finish off a debate that he did with Kevin Casterly, Neocon, and Kevin Castley. And I think there's some really good points we can make on that. Me personally, I've made some strides with the anti-war and the war basis, some issues there. So I want to kind of break these things down. We're going to go over his war, lockdown, Bill of Rights, drugs, proxy wars, Vietnam, the Cold War. That's the big one, and the fallacies there. Waco Massacre. Waco Massacre. That's a rough one. So take care, everybody. This is episode 8.1 of the Liberty Podcast Review. Check out Clint's podcast, Liberty Lockdown.